Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cassie and I with our Sagittarius New Moon edition. The Sagittarius New Moon is today with Three-Eye Atlas, closest to Earth. I just already today did an interview with the author of the book Yuga Shift, and we talked about Three-Eye Atlas in that, and lots of truths coming out. But for me, I am the Cosmic Owl, Cosmic Owl Astrology. My YouTube channel is Cosmic Owl Astrology if you're watching on Kathy's. And I offer two memberships, Spiral Codex, which is my main membership, or a Lighter Touch Spiral Weave membership, which you can join through YouTube or Substack or my website, and find out the details. And what else? I was going to say something else. Oh, yes. Save the date. March 6th, 7th, or is it 7th and 8th? I am offering a not 2 day, series immersion workshop. So watch this space for that, based on my book, but kind of looking at your charts and going deeper. So,
Oh, cool. Good to know about that one. Hey, everybody. I am Kathy Beal, and I have whatever the respiratory weirdness is that's going around the Northeast, so humor me. Uh, my channel is Professional Aquarian on YouTube. My website is empowermentunlimited.net. I have a couple of things for you to be aware of on the 22nd in the evening Eastern time. Psychic Annette Dion and I are throwing a solstice party. There's a banner on the top of my site, empowermentunlimited.net, where you can register. Also, another save the date, January 7th in the evening, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Donna Woodwell and I are having our annual workbook look at 2026. It's a write your own story, and we take you through what the aspects, what the each planetary shift is doing in your chart so you can craft a story out of it because we both like to tell stories.
and
And
this week,
we
oh,
don't we
sorry,
don't
yeah.
have the I'm sorry, we don't have the URL for that, so
Mm.
just hang out on my I will announce it when we're ready with that.
Cool. Yeah, so we're this is the pre-holiday thing. We're going to give next week a miss because, we've been doing pretty much every week for over a year, and it is the holidays. I'm also a little bit behind because it was my birthday last weekend and I was away for a few days with my husband. So we're going to look at the bigger picture of where we're going astrologically over the next few weeks. So we're going to start with the news this week and just kind of give you more of a where we're at kind of thing. Um, Look, I think
And we're
that's
going to
what
do
I.
a victory lap in a bit as well,
Mhm.
because where we are, we're going to look at where we are, but also all these things that we have been saying were coming are starting to coalesce. So be of good cheer, be of abiding faith, even though some of these news items are fairly difficult. I'm going to
Mhm.
start with the hardest one, and then we'll talk about more big picture things. Mars, planet of god of war, squared Neptune, god of confusion. Well, the ruler of everything
Mhm.
that's unhinged. Um, Idealism, fundamentalism, drug addiction, and there were three father-son death events that occurred. Two of them patricide, where the son killed the father. Rob and Michelle Reiner being killed
Mhm.
by their son, who had, well, he's in custody and being charged with
Yes.
it, who had a history of drug problems. Um, the opera singer Jubilant Sykes was stabbed to death by his son. Both of those were stabbings. And
And that's
father and
very
son,
Mars, by the way. Knives.
ex knives, and father and son shooters in
Mm.
the Bondi Beach uh, mass shooting that occurred all around the same time.
And
Okay.
there's weird connections between the shooter at Brown University and the MIT professor. They had studied together in Lisbon in the 90s, and that's very feels very Neptunian to me, right? So, mm,
And the professor will come back in the news in a couple
mhm.
of minutes in my list.
Mm-hmm.
We have been talking a lot about being at a crossroads from the Gemini new moon, making a grand cross with the North Node and the South Node, and a lot of things having to do with changes in alliances in particular. Okay, so a big example of that, GOP House members crossed over to vote with Democratic members of Congress to force a discharge petition out on ACA extensions. The extensions weren't put in the bill that ultimately passed, but the changes in alliances bit does fit the astrology. So we'll see what
Mm-hmm.
happens with that. Um, the sun has been squaring Saturn, the government, responsibility, consequences. Venus, money, women, relationships has been in an adjustment aspect with Jupiter in Cancer, which has to do with nurturing. And the sun was in an adjustment aspect with Uranus, shocking developments, shocking news. Okay, a whole bunch of stuff going in this department. The U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Department of Education office in D.C. is flying an alt-right appeal to heaven pine tree flag that was used by the J6 rioters and white nationalists. Okay, it's a change in alliance. Couple of big ones. Jared Kushner withdrew from Paramount's hostile takeover bid of Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers told the shareholders to reject the Paramount bid. They want to go with the Netflix one. Kushner's
Mm.
firm also pulled out of Change in Alliance. Um, a first ever $500 million Trump International Hotel in Europe, hours after four Serbian officials were charged with bribery and falsifying documents related to the project. I think there'll be more to come for
Mm.
both of these. All right.
Mm.
MIT professor Nuno Loureiro, I'm sure I have mispronounced his name, who was the director of the Plasma Science and Fusion Center, so a noted fusion researcher. He was one of 400 scientists honored by Biden before he left office, was fatally shot at his home in Massachusetts, which has been declared a homicide. The next day, Truth Social's parent company, Trump Media and Technology Group, agreed to an all-stock merger with a nuclear fusion firm in a $6 million deal to develop utility-scale fusion power plant.
Oh.
Well, okay, so that's the Pluto part as well, but I think that we're going to
Mm.
see a lot more coming out of that little piece of news. The Kennedy Center board changed its name to the Trump Kennedy Center, and apparently he's already putting his name on the building.
Oh.
Uh, the Trump administration is dismantling a key climate research center in Colorado, and Health and Human Services is cutting millions in grants to the American Academy of Pediatrics. Watch these spaces.
Mm.
Uh, Changes in alliance. The FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino says he will step down in January. He is the one who started changing his tune about things after he saw the Epstein files. So that's got a cat
Mm-hmm.
and the canary feel to it. Um, Federal Communications Commissioner Chairman Brendan Carr told a Senate committee on Wednesday that his agency is not formally independent. It's supposed to be an independent executive agency. And after he admitted this, the word independent went off its website. Okay, now going back to, I said Sun square Saturn, Venus in an adjustment aspect to Jupiter, Sun in an adjustment aspect to shocking Uranus. With this going on, the Sun Saturn for some time and through December 31st is in an open current with Trump's Saturn and Venus. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
His Saturn and Venus in Cancer. And lo and behold, the walls are coming at him from multiple directions. This is
Mm.
the we've told you this was coming. Here it is. Dams starting to break bit. Susie Wiles, his chief of staff, had an interview in Vanity Fair. Actually, it was a piece that she'd had 11 interviews, I believe one a month. And she said she'd seen the Epstein files. Trump is in them. Clinton, by the way, never went to the island. She said a lot of other incredibly damning things. Saturn, woman, Venus. But wait, there's
Mm-hmm.
more. Around this at the same time, Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, his opening statement to the House Judiciary Committee said he had evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump organized a conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election and prevent the peaceful transfer of power. He also said that he had developed powerful evidence. So he didn't say beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the conviction level. He had developed powerful evidence that showed Trump willfully retained highly classified documents after he left office in January
Mm.
2021, storing them at Mar-a-Lago, including in a bathroom and a ballroom where events and gatherings and people were going through, and then also tried to obstruct justice to conceal his continued retention of the documents.
Mm.
Um, Couple of more things. The Pulitzer Board, Trump is suing the Pulitzer Board, defamation, something. And they are responding by demanding discovery, including Trump's medical and psychiatric records, his financial dealings, his foreign gifts, his crypto assets, and much, much more.
Oh, good on them.
Uh,
Mm.
Now we get to the thing everybody is curious about, Epstein files. All right. Now, Maxwell has filed a pro se motion. That means on her own behalf. Her attorneys fired her, so she has filed this on her own behalf to vacate her conviction for sex trafficking, and she did this right before the Department of Justice is under a deadline from the House Oversight Committee to turn over the DOJ's Epstein files. That's supposed to be tonight. Mike
Hmm.
Johnson has sent the House home today. They're not in
Yep.
session today because of
Yep.
this.
Sent them
Um,
home early. Early.
Early, the House Oversight Committee, in the meantime, has dribbled out more inexplicably weird and more photos, and
Mm.
they keep saying tip of the iceberg. We're holding back the worst stuff. And the New York Times published an investigation of the Trump Epstein relationship that called Trump Epstein's wingman. So it's coming at him. We now have um, the 14th Amendment grounds for not being in office, the criminal conspiracy, the conspiracy to interfere with the transfer of power. We've got stuff on what happened with all of those confidential, classified documents. We have more
Hmm.
and more stuff coming out about his role with
Oh.
Epstein. The only little piece that's not here yet is the election interference for 2024, but hang tight, folks. It's all coming
Mm.
out.
It really is. Oh, and wasn't one of the pictures of a young woman with Lolita quotes written all over her body or something? So
Yep,
some
down
of
her spine.
these
Some very, very
they are gradually getting more disturbing, these images. So yeah. So like I said, we're going to look more at just the big picture astrology. I'm not going to go through a dozen aspects in detail. Again, we each do new full moon videos, week ahead videos as well, if you want the granular transits. But there's a couple I want to mention, but also both of us really want you to kind of just tune in to the direction we're going to point at that all the planets are moving towards and how things are converging over the next few weeks. We've got lots of cycles ending, lots of new cycles beginning, but also it's just a really interesting time. So I thought I'd just start with where we're at on this new moon today, with 3i Atlas conjunct the galactic center, but anyway, closest to Earth. So this new moon is conjunct the galactic center. Again, I did a whole video on it, so did Kathy, but it's in that adjustment aspect to Uranus, the kind of awakener. Neptune and Saturn both direct now, moving back towards Aries. Um, there's changes coming. But one thing as well is that Mercury tomorrow will square the nodes. And remember, we just had that Gemini full moon that Kathy mentioned that was at 13 degrees square the nodes. Well, Mercury is the guide or ruler for the South Node and for that Gemini full moon. and Mercury is kind of reaching that turning point. And after that, after a pop, oh, let me take Black Moon Lilith out because I don't really use her in these and this one. But when Mercury has squared the nodes, almost all the planets will be moving towards that north node, almost all the personal planets anyway, and a few others, and almost all the planets, the main planets, will be in the last one, two, three, four signs, and then heading towards the first sign, Aries. So this is just kind of extraordinary. So I would just like to quickly look at January the 6th, and then I think we'll just look at the new moons. But on January the 6th, most of you know that I work with the Venus star point, and we have a superior Venus star point where Venus is behind the sun. So Venus is in the underworld. By that point, Mercury is as well, and Mars as well, which means that we can't see them because of the sun's light. So things are still going to be happening in the background, in my opinion. But I do want to say that this is like the full Venus from a retrograde Venus star point at 18 Capricorn that was on January the 8th, 2022. So 3 years ago. So think back to that. It's all connected with Ukraine war, by the way, and things
Mhm.
like that. So this is kind of like things coming to a head because of that. And then just
May
three
I add
days
something?
later. Yeah, I was just,
I will
yeah, go
interrupt you
on.
here. I know
Mm,
it's getting your flow.
mm,
January 6th is
yeah.
Epiphany. It's Epiphany
Oh,
in the
yes, it
church
is.
calendar, and I
Hmm.
think there are no coincidences. So,
No,
so
I agree. And of course, January the 6th is a memorable kind of date anyway in this country. But
mhm.
then just 3 days later, Mars is Cazimi the sun as well and invisible from our perspective. But look at this, Venus is still at 19 degrees at that point, and all of these are really lined up and opposing Jupiter. Now, this is kind of earthquake material, but also this is like a huge kind of like expansion of truth coming out, I think, revelation. Mercury at that point is still aspecting the nodes, but from a new sign and is conjunct Pholus. That's the kind of cause and effect, lid coming off if you haven't been in integrity kind of energy. And so that's yet another turning point. This 6th to the 9th is a really powerful day. I think geologically, Stefan Burns is predicting earthquakes, but I think there's going to be earthquakes in all kinds of earthquakes, in the structures of our institutions, of our man made laws, of our governments. Anything you want to say about that? Um,
Oh, thank you. Yes,
mm,
Venus being what we value, and this is very,
mm,
all of this energy is very here now. How do we calm the chaos? What do we do
mm,
about it? And it is one foot in front of the other, planning. I keep
mm-hmm,
calling this project management, but Venus
mm-hmm,
is what we value. And our money and our relationships and things that have stood the test of time and what we
mm,
want to have going with us. And a really simplified way of looking at this is Venus says what she wants, and then Mars says, "Okay, I'll go get it for you,"
mm-hmm,
and they're in unison. They're
mm-hmm,
acting completely unified, and Mars in Capricorn under some theories, there are some ways of looking at astrology that call Capricorn movable Earth, not just cardinal
mm-hmm,
Earth, but there's something self-starting. This isn't having to wait for someone to tell you to go do it, and it
mm-hmm,
is determined and incremental, setting off a path, and it will be big, and it will have a lot to do with who we're taking care of with that opposition to Jupiter, who we're
mm-hmm,
nurturing, and so the healthcare subsidies will be a big piece of it, but
mm-hmm,
also what's happening with the economy, what's happening with families. Um, There's an
I also want to
81.
note that it's square. Chiron is actually stationed direct by that point as well, not long before. I'm not going to look at the exact date. So it, that's kind of both the wound and the medicine, just saying. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it has an awful lot to do with our own resources, those
Mm-hmm.
of us who are, the US centric view of this, but also our personal resources and what our relationship is to concepts of home and country.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for anyone, but especially for people in the US and Canada because they're both cancer nations.
And there was one, oh yeah, back to that Venus retrograde in January of 2022. Mars was also in Capricorn then, and Venus and Mars were doing a little dance together at that point too. So again, things that began back then are going to come back up, I believe, in a big way. so so that's a very big period. So I'm just going to quickly move now through each new moon, which includes an eclipse, but just to kind of show you the pattern. So by the time we get to the new moon on January the 18th, Venus will have moved into Aquarius. But can you see, everybody, how all of these planets are just moving inexorably towards that north node, while Saturn and Neptune moving towards Aries? We're at this point, we have another 28-degree new moon. They started with Libra and they finished with Pisces, I believe. So we've got loads of 28-degree new moons. It's not that uncommon in this time of year to have a few at the same degree, but this is a lot. And one thing I want to mention about this is that Pluto and Vesta, the state, the hearth, are now conjunct. Venus is about to meet Pluto, but in the prior date I looked at, Vesta was in a lovely Earth trine to Uranus, the surprise, shock, or radical change kind of asteroid. So things are really lining up. But look at this pattern here. Another mini grand trine. Wow. Earth and water. Things are going to be eroded, come out even more. Mercury's there, Mars is there, action is going to be taken. News is going to be quite shocking again, I think, around that time. Would you agree?
Oh, yes, I would
Hmm.
agree.
Hmm.
But to stress for everyone,
Mm.
the focus is how do we clean this up? How do
Mm.
we fix it? What do we want to
Oh
do?
yeah.
It's not I am at the mercy of this utter chaos
Oh.
everywhere. Yes, there'll still be chaos. And with everything inexorably moving toward the North
Mm.
Node is, I always say that's where there's a this way to the future sign, like the
Mm-hmm.
flag. Here's where we're headed. North Node in Pisces, that's kind of like being stuck in the interconnectedness of everything. This is
Yeah.
not setting up borders. This is
Yeah.
being highly, highly aware of the impact, like empathy and the impact on other people.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
either the entire planet is victimized, which I don't think is where we're heading, or
No.
there is a heightened awareness of we are all in this together.
Mm-hmm. And we're starting to kind of see all the web, and Aquarius in many ways is kind of like pulling the pieces together, the bigger picture after the kind of Capricorn kind of shocks and surprises, and it's so we can draw an end to it, in my opinion. So because these are closing cycles. So
And there's something here about the grown-ups stepping up.
hmm.
Where are the
Hmm.
grown-ups? Oh, they're showing up.
Yeah, very much so. And then one other Kazemi, because we have so many close together. So we had Venus on January the 6th, and then Mars on January the 9th. And then we have Mercury Kazemi between retrogrades on January the 21st, moving us even further. By January the 21st, we've only got, Juno, the asteroid, Pholus, the centaur, who moves really slowly, and Mars left in Capricorn. Mars is trine Uranus, but then we've got the Sun and Mercury and Pluto all pretty much Kazemi together. That's massive change, massive shift. Um, Again,
Revelations.
yes, revelations, truth coming out. Yeah, and but it's also again, how are we going to stop this and do away with it? There's Venus women values with Vesta, the state, the hearth. They're pretty much sitting on the south node of the USA at that point as well. So that's kind of interesting too. So then we'll go on to the next new moon, unless you want to say more about this.
I would just say revelations
Mm,
about technology and that date, January 21st,
mm-hmm. Yep.
still just at the 1 year anniversary of the chaos that we've been in. And I'm expecting,
Mm-hmm.
oh, anyway, I've always been expecting information coming out about what actually happened with the technology.
Yes, absolutely. So, um, February the 17th, this is actually an eclipse. See another one at 28 degrees. Now we have Mars conjunct Vesta, the hearth, the state, but look how everything is dragged close together. And by that point, Saturn and Neptune have just moved into Aries, about to have their conjunction like very shortly after this eclipse. Venus is 10 degrees away from the eclipse, and the sun, therefore, conjunct the North Node, which means Venus is visible again as evening star, which is more peaceful love goddess kind of energy, which is also kind of the waning cycle of the Venus cycle that I've just kind of talked about. This is, in fact, that's a hot degree 8 Pisces, because I use the true calculation of the nodes, which means they oscillate. Um, and during the eclipse season, they stay at the same degree. If you use the average calculation, that works a little bit differently. But Mercury will go retrograde on February the 26th at 22 Pisces and go back to 8 Pisces, conjunct that node, North Node again. So,
Picking up
this.
more info.
But look at this. This is square to Uranus, and Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius too. Fixed signs. They don't change easily, but when they do, it can be a kind of a big earthquake, so to speak. And Jupiter is about to station direct. Anyway.
And
mm,
this one is setting off a 1.5 year plus maybe cycle. It's the first
mm,
eclipse in the next
mm-hmm.
eclipse family, and it's hitting the reset button really good, really hard.
Oh yeah, definitely. But again, just how I started. Just look at how tight these planets are all together. There's barely anything in this area of the chart over here. And so this is, it's not strictly speaking between the nodes. So it's not, I can't remember what that term was, but it's very concentrated, which means really concentrated energy in the last 2 signs of the zodiac now and the first sign. Endings, beginnings, right?
Also, this eclipse is on the
Mm,
U.S. Moon, so there's something
mm-hmm.
really big about how we define ourselves as a people
And
that
Jupiter's a
grows out of this.
And Jupiter's not quite getting to the US sun, but it's stationing direct pretty close to it too.
Hmm.
So, and we'll probably look in more detail at those things in future things. And then I'm just going to stop at March. We have the last 28-degree new moon. Just look at this now. you know, we've only got Pluto left in Aquarius now. Look at this. Line up in Pisces. Mercury is about to station direct, conjunct that north node, still at 8 degrees. And what date is the actual lunar eclipse? I cannot remember. That one's March the 3rd. Before that, oh, we've looked at that one. But then we have, yeah, that's the last eclipse, the one we looked at. Anyway, just look at this. The last sign, the first sign. And, there's many activations here. This is where conjunct the degree. Neptune spent its last period in the sign of Pisces. There's been lots of hits of that degree as well. Um, this is, you know, the amniotic fluid, kind of like the womb before we birth something new. And it's also endings because it's the last sign of the zodiac. And again, lots more I could say, but it's just, I think how they're lining up is just pretty unprecedented, to be honest. So,
So a
mm-hmm,
way to look at this in your own life and also with what is
mm-hmm,
going on geopolitically
mm-hmm,
is in March of 2025, there was a massive pileup of planets and the sun
mm-hmm,
and the moon at the end of Pisces, right as Neptune was making its, right before Neptune made its first crossing into Aries. So now
mm-hmm,
we have kind of a there's going to be a retrospective feel and remember remember what it felt like. The big event that characterized Neptune first moving into Aries
mm-hmm,
was Senator Cory Booker speaking for 25 and a half
mm-hmm,
hours on the floor of the Senate. That kind of fiery, all where
mm-hmm.
there was like a spiritual message through it all. It's
Yeah.
almost like the current version of a Martin Luther King speech plus. So there's something similar that we're
Mm-hmm,
on the edge of, only this time it's really going to put an end to a way of being. We've been
mm-hmm,
dealing for the past maybe 2 years with the outer planets dancing around with those guys in at the end of Pisces,
mm-hmm,
and we're moving completely out of that mud into firiness. So this is going to really set us into the potential of the Saturn Neptune um, conjunction in
mm-hmm.
Aries. So to translate this into English, we are in a process that started in October. Actually, there are many different starting points
Yeah.
for it,
The
but the
March
big
one, the March one was huge though, as well. Yeah, go on.
but if we
Yeah.
look at it just from the perspective
Mm,
of these
mm,
moons with really supersized, potent kernels of new beginnings, and they've moved through different ways of how we experience life,
mm,
and now we're in the final one by the time we get into mid-March. That has a lot to do with the universality of everything. Water will be an issue. The Arctic may be an
mm,
issue. The seas.
yeah.
Diseases passing around may be an issue, but this is going to really wrap something up and bring us into a very different way of experiencing things together. So how this all applies to what's been going on politically is none of what we have been observing over the last year can, and I'm putting my neck out here, can really continue after we
Mm-hmm,
get through this. And I'm not saying
yeah.
that people won't be gone before then. No,
Yeah.
don't freak. Things could still change very dramatically, but the forces that pushed a lot of this into our down our throats essentially are being washed away.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Totally. And to go back to that March period that Kathy mentioned, it was the
Hmm.
Venus and Mercury retrograde, almost at the same degrees, going from
Right.
Aries back into Pisces, sandwiched with two eclipses. It was huge. So this is just wild, to be honest. And then by the time in April, when we have a new moon, they're moving to different degrees, and we're really starting a new cycle in so many ways. And we'll look at all these individually over time. But I just felt like it was good to just kind of see the flow to go back to that last one. At,
And I'll say that new moon that you just had up there is
mhm.
at the degree of the moon of someone that we've been saying is going to play a really huge role.
Yep,
27
this one.
Aries.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, a woman, by the way,
Yeah. Hmm.
and she has a full moon, so sun opposing too. So, yeah, this is wild times, and yes, it's taking a lot of things are taking longer than we hoped. I'm going to stop the share, but this is how the flow of the planets works, the cycles and things. This start of new, ending of old cycles, and we're really just in the waning cycle of so many cycles. So, which means
Mhm.
they're heading towards new starts. So it's quite astounding. It's I don't think I've ever seen them quite so stacked up like that.
No, I
No,
haven't.
no, me neither. We had a lot of planets lined up quite on one side of the chart during the pandemic, especially the first one, but that was to between the nodes, which was very different. This one's with the North Node. So, mm, so
It's changing the mundane experience of life. If
mm,
a bunch of planets are traveling in connection, excuse me, outer planets
mm,
are traveling in connection, that creates big cycles. These are the bodies that
mhm,
directly influence how we experience day-to-day living, our
mhm,
communication systems, how we use our energy, how men and women get along, how
mm,
what we value, what our social mode is. And they're just in this cluster moving from this mode of expression to this, to this, to this, to this.
mhm,
And
yeah,
today, as we are recording on the Sagittarius new moon,
mm,
we're at a moment of really, really fine tuning with Uranus slamming, tweaking things by being in
mhm,
an adjustment aspect to it. Um, this is a time to clean your mind out and to
mhm.
refresh the lens through which you are viewing reality. And how could things be better? How could things be bigger? I encourage people to experience what's going on with curiosity. And as I bring this up, the light is now shining like crazy. I didn't barricade my windows
Ah,
because it was
that's
dark,
funny.
but now we have light. So,
Yay.
okay, dance with it. Here I am. Overexposed.
There's no light here. It's so dark here today. But anyway, so I'd like to wish you all happy holidays, no matter how you celebrate. Try and really do that self care and just enjoy the moment and take care of you and yours or your local community if you don't have much, around you. It's a great time to go out and, I don't know, do some carol singing or go and volunteer at the food bank or something. It's whether you're a Christmas person or Hanukkah person or whatever you are, it's still the same energy at this time of year. So go and have some fun, Kathy.
Please.
All right, everybody. We'll see you in the new year because we're not going to do next week. Bye for now.
Bye.